I was standing in my cap and gown, my hands shaking, my phone clutched so tightly it left marks on my skin. "We will celebrate you later." That's what she said. Like it was nothing. Like my graduation, my big day, the one I had worked for, was just another inconvenience. I looked around the hall. Parents hugging their children. Cameras flashing. Balloons everywhere. Smiles. Laughter. And I realized something crushing. My mom wasn't coming. She chose my brother's party over me. Over my moment. Over me. I stared at the screen, reading the same message again and again. Later. That word hit harder than any argument, any fight, any insult I had ever endured. Later. Like my happiness could wait. Like I didn't deserve it now. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to breathe, forcing myself to move. I smiled when my name was called, walked across the stage, shook a stranger's hand, pretended that everything was fine. The flash of cameras blinded me, and for a moment I could almost pretend that she was there, running in at the last second, apologizing, telling me she was proud. But I knew better. When the ceremony ended, I sat alone on the steps outside. Everyone else had family there. I scrolled through my phone and froze. There it was, a photo from the party I wasn't invited to. My mom, smiling wide, holding a drink, my brother in the middle of the chaos, balloons everywhere. So proud, the caption said. My chest tightened until it hurt. My name is Laura. And that day, I realized something that I would carry with me for years. My family didn't see me the way I had always seen them. I could wait. I could understand. I always had. But there was a line, and she had crossed it. The drive home was silent. My aunt tried to fill the space with words. She spoke of pride, of achievement, of how hard I worked. I nodded, thanked her quietly, but inside I replayed my mom's words over and over. "We will celebrate you later." Later never came. That night, I folded my gown and placed it carefully in the closet. No cake, no toast, no celebration. Just me, my room, and a quiet, growing storm inside me. Weeks later, my mom called like nothing had happened. She told me about the party, how stressed she had been, how much money it had cost. And then she added the same phrase, "We still need to do something for you. Maybe next month." I said it's okay, and I meant something very different than she imagined. From that day forward, I stopped sharing my plans, my triumphs, my failures. When I got my first job, I didn't tell her. When I moved to a new city, I handled everything alone. When life got heavy, I carried it silently. And they barely noticed. Years passed in quiet, polite distance. Until the phone rang. It was a Tuesday, and I almost didn't answer. But something made me pick it up. "Laura," my mom said, voice smaller than I remembered. "We need to talk." I leaned back in my chair, calm, collected. I had learned patience the hard way. She didn't start with an apology. She never did. Instead, she talked around it about stress, family obligations, and how hard life had been. Behind her, I could hear my brother pacing, sighing so loudly I would notice. Finally, she said the words I had been dreading. "We need your help." I asked slowly, carefully. "With what?" After a pause, she explained. My brother's business had failed. Bad decisions, bad timing, serious debt. The same house I grew up in, was at risk. "You're doing well now," she added. "We thought maybe you could help us get through this." Help us. Not him. Us. I stared at the ceiling, silent, calm. Power simmering quietly beneath restraint. "I need time to think," I said. That night, I didn't sleep. Every missed birthday, every cancelled plan, every time I had been overlooked, every later that never came, replayed in my mind like a slow burning fire. My graduation wasn't an exception, it was the rule. I opened an old folder on my laptop. Emails, voicemails, messages I had never deleted. I didn't know why I kept them. Maybe I knew one day they would matter. One message stood out, a voicemail from graduation day. "We will celebrate you later." I replayed it over and over. Her voice, cheerful, certain, oblivious. Later never came. But now I realized this would. The next morning I asked for details, numbers, deadlines, paperwork. They were relieved. too relieved. They thought I was already on their side. That night, my brother called. His tone was casual, confident, the same old charm. You owe us, you know. Family sticks together. Almost, I thought. Almost I wanted to give in. Almost I let myself imagine handing over help, forgiving everything. But I didn't. I said, maybe, let me see what I can do. And just like that, the clock started ticking. I didn't answer their first few calls. I let them worry. I let them fumble through the details themselves, assuming I was already helping behind the scenes. It felt strange, powerful even to sit back and watch them scramble, thinking I was on their side. My mind kept drifting to that day on the steps alone, my gown folded neatly in the closet. That feeling of being invisible, of being second, of being overlooked. I promised myself silently I would never be powerless like that again. I started small. I asked for paperwork, for numbers, for documentation. The debt wasn't just financial, it was tangled with missed filings, unpaid loans, and a host of decisions my brother had made in panic. Every email I requested, every form they sent, they believed was part of my help. They told me everything freely because they thought I was on their side. That was my first advantage. One night, my brother called while I was reviewing the documents. You know this is serious, right? He said. We're talking about the house. We're talking about everything we've built. His voice had that edge, confident but shaky underneath. Yes, I said calmly. I understand. I just need a little more time to make sure we do this properly. He didn't argue. Not really. But I could hear the panic creeping in between his words. They didn't know that I had already mapped every loophole, every risk, every weak point. I wasn't helping yet. I was watching, waiting, planning. The days that followed were almost ordinary. Calls, emails, questions. But beneath the surface, I was laying the foundation. I researched legal protections, consulted a financial advisor discreetly, and made notes on every promise they ever broke. I kept asking questions that sounded helpful. What's the interest rate here? Who signed off on this loan? When was this payment missed? They answered everything. I absorbed it all. Then came the message from my mom that stopped me cold. Do you remember your graduation? I wish I had been there. I stared at it. That voice, that message, it was an apology in the smallest way, but tears too late. I typed back simply. I remember. No tears. No guilt. Just the truth. That single line felt heavier than any confrontation I could have had. Weeks passed. I asked for more documents, more explanations. They sent everything, every detail, every misstep, every hidden promise my brother had made and broken. And every time I reminded myself, patience is power. I was in control now, even if they didn't realize it. One night, I sat with my laptop open, the room quiet. I listed 3 steps. Only 3. That was all I needed. Step 1. Complete transparency. No more lies. No more hiding. Step 2. The house must be protected legally from further risk. Step 3. I control the finances until the debt is cleared. Nothing more. Nothing less. I knew they would accept these terms. They were desperate. They didn't know I had already set the stage to enforce them. My brother called again that evening, trying the old charm. Laura, come on. You're making this harder than it has to be. We're family. Yes, I said, calm, deliberate. We are family, and families honor agreements. The pause that followed was telling. He realized he had underestimated me. My mother didn't say a word. She was silent, listening, waiting. I replayed my graduation voicemail once more, softly, almost as a ritual. We will celebrate you later. That moment became my compass. Later never came. And now, this careful orchestration was my measure of control. Then came the slight twist. My mom asked, almost casually, do you think we're doing the right thing? I smiled faintly to myself. I didn't answer immediately. I let the question linger. It was a subtle reminder. I was no longer just a child waiting for acknowledgement. I was a strategist. They were unaware they were on my clock. A few days later, I suggested arranging a formal meeting with a financial firm. Neutral, professional, unbiased. They agreed, eager for guidance. I didn't reveal that the firm would protect the house in a trust and limit my brother's access. That step was invisible to them. Part of the slow build-up, the quiet twist that would hit later. Be why now, the panic had begun to creep into their conversations. My brother spoke faster, more frantically. Every call carried a new layer of anxiety. My mom asked questions, seeking reassurance. I answered selectively, measured. Every pause, every strategic nod, every phrase was calculated to build tension, to increase their sense of dependence on me. And then, a text from my mom arrived late at night. "Laura, you've grown into someone I barely recognize. I wish I had seen it sooner." I didn't reply immediately. Instead, I reread the graduation message one more time. Later never came. But now, years later, this meticulous, patient control was my version of justice.
In the meantime, I maintained a calm exterior. I laughed at work, shared ordinary stories with friends, and built my life forward. But the quiet ledger in my phone, the collection of every slight and dismissive message, grew heavier in my mind. Each note, each record was a step closer to the moment I would assert myself. It was around this time that a subtle twist occurred. My mother called one night, casual as ever. She spoke about her day, her garden, my sister's work. No apology, no acknowledgement, just small talk. I listened quietly, only replying with polite, measured words. I did not give her the satisfaction of an emotional reaction. The calm on my side, contrasted with her oblivious cheerfulness, was deliberate. I realized then that this was the moment I had been waiting for. Not a confrontation, not a lecture, just observation, waiting for her to underestimate the weight of my patience. And in that moment, I knew the next step, the one decisive action that would speak louder than years of explanations or apologies, was approaching. I had one chance to deliver it. One sentence. One moment to assert that the silence had power. And I would not waste it. The morning of the family reunion, I sat at my kitchen table with my phone in front of me. The invitation stared back at me, glowing like a challenge. I could almost feel my mother expecting a quick reply. She expected me to type a polite yes, to forgive silently, to maintain the facade, but I didn't. I waited. I watched. Every passing minute added weight to the anticipation. Every hour amplified the eventual impact of my decision. I thought about the aisle, about the empty seats, about the calm message that had first broken me and had now, months later, become my shield. My husband noticed my silence. "You're going to reply, aren't you?" he asked gently. I shook my head. "Not yet," I said. "It's not about being mean. It's about being seen." Hours passed. Calls started coming in. My father, nervously polite. My sister, attempting humor. My mother, cheerful, completely unaware of the storm brewing on my end. I read their messages, noticed the shifts in tone as impatience crept in, and stored them mentally. Every word, every slight, every expectation would matter. Finally, I typed a single sentence. One line that would carry the weight of months. I paused, reread it, calm, controlled, precise. Then I sent it. I already celebrated alone. "Enjoy your later." I didn't call. I didn't explain. I didn't add anything. The sentence was enough. The reactions were instantaneous. My phone buzzed with missed calls, texts, and voice messages. My mother's voice trembled on the first voicemail. "Emily, I didn't realize." And then she stopped, uncertain. My father tried to reason, his tone defensive yet shocked. My sister sent a flurry of messages, angry, confused, and desperate. I stayed calm. I let them feel it. Let them realize, quietly, that their assumptions had been wrong. That I had not reacted earlier, that I had not forgiven automatically. That their later could never erase the choice they had made months ago. The family group chat exploded. Messages poured in, questions, guilt, explanations, excuses. Some tried to justify. Others tried to manipulate. But I did not reply. I let the storm unfold, watched it rise, and smiled quietly. My silence had become louder than any argument. Over the next few days, the subtle shifts began. My mother started calling more frequently, her tone softer, hesitant. She tried small gestures, sending flowers, asking casual questions, making invitations that I didn't immediately accept. Each action was a reminder of her underestimation. Each apology unsaid but implied in her attempts to reconnect. Friends noticed the change too. My husband mentioned that people were commenting on how I seemed stronger, calmer, more confident. They didn't know the ledger I had kept. The screenshots, the ignored calls, the months of quiet observation. They only saw the result, control, and the result was satisfying. Not because I had hurt them, but because they finally understood, quietly, that their decisions carried consequences. My mother realized that ignoring my feelings, skipping my wedding, assuming later would suffice, was a mistake. and she felt it without me needing to shout or demand acknowledgement. There was one particular moment that replayed in my mind. My mother, standing at a family dinner, realizing that I wouldn't be present the next day for a minor event. Her smile faltered. She whispered to my father, almost audibly, "She's serious. She isn't just upset anymore." That quiet shock, calm but real, was worth every moment of waiting. I had built this carefully, deliberately. Every ignored message, every patient observation, every small note of injustice had contributed to this moment. And it wasn't done yet. Revenge, in its quiet form, has layers. Not all are revealed at once. Not all are meant to be noticed immediately. Weeks later, another family event came up. Invitations were sent. My mother's note next to my name was almost apologetic. The weight of her oversight hung in the air, unspoken, visible in the hesitation of her voice when she called. I didn't rush. I didn't reply immediately. I let the anticipation grow, and when I finally did attend, it was on my terms. Not as a submissive daughter. Not as someone who would excuse absence. I was calm, controlled, fully aware of the quiet power shift. Every glance, every word, every small interaction was now in my favor. I had learned a lesson in patience, in strategy, in observing human behavior. And I knew something essential. Revenge isn't about destruction or anger. It's about asserting one's value silently, precisely, and with dignity. The satisfaction wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. They finally understood that actions have consequences. That later, when used carelessly, carries weight. And that sometimes, the most effective revenge is a single, calm sentence delivered at the perfect moment. The day I finally attended the family gathering, I walked in calmly. No rush, no dramatics, just measured steps. Every detail of my plan played in my mind like a quiet symphony. The invitation had been their attempt to fix months of neglect, but now the power was mine. My mother noticed me immediately. Her smile faltered slightly, that tiny hesitation I had been waiting for. I greeted everyone politely, laughed when necessary, and let subtle tension linger. Unspoken but felt. Every glance, every small remark reflected the underestimation she had carried for months. And then came the moment. My mother offered a gift and began softly. "We didn't mean to." I stopped her with a calm, precise line I already celebrated alone. "Enjoy your later." The room paused. Silence fell heavier than any argument. My mother's eyes widened. My father tensed. My sister's humor froze. That single sentence, calm and measured, carried months of quiet observation and patience. They realized instantly that their assumptions had been wrong. Later could no longer dismiss me. Over the next hours, small gestures unfolded. My mother tried to engage, apologetic but hesitant. My father attempted explanations, unsure. My sister softened, realizing the gravity of what they had ignored. I responded politely but firmly, asserting presence and control without shouting or confrontation. Friends and distant relatives noticed. "Emily seems stronger," my husband whispered. They didn't know about the ledger of ignored messages, missed calls, and voicemails I had kept. They only saw the result: calm, measured, undeniable power. Weeks later, subtle shifts continued. Invitations began respecting my preferences. My mother cautiously sought my opinion on family matters. She was learning slowly that her previous indifference had consequences. The ultimate satisfaction was quiet. No celebration, no spectacle. Just a calm demonstration that choices, even delayed ones, matter. Later had become a mirror, reflecting their actions back at them. Reflecting on the months leading to this moment, I realized revenge wasn't about anger or confrontation. It was about asserting value, being seen, and letting others recognize their mistakes naturally. That evening, I asked my husband softly, "If you were in my place, would you have done the same?" Not for an answer, but to reflect on patience, control, and subtle strength. They had underestimated me for months. And now, quietly, with dignity and calm, I had shown them the cost of their choices. The quiet victory was mine. Think carefully. If you were in my place, what would you do? Share your thoughts below and stay tuned for more stories like this. Subscribe to this channel and press the bell icon.
Finally, I introduced a neutral firm to manage the trust permanently. My brother's access to the house was formally limited, legally enforced. The house was safe. The finances were controlled. And I remained the calm center, the one in control. There was no shouting, no dramatic confrontation. Just quiet, deliberate power. Every interaction, every delay, every carefully measured word reminded them of the shift. I didn't need to declare victory. They could feel it. Every glance, every pause, every hesitation from them confirmed it. And then, a subtle message arrived from my mom. "Laura, I see now. I see everything." I didn't reply immediately. I let her sit with it, let her understand fully. Later never came, but this patient, precise, undeniable control had, the layers were complete. The slow burn of patience, the calculated manipulation, the restrained guidance, it all culminated here. I had orchestrated justice quietly, legally, and without malice, but with undeniable impact. That night, I sat back, reflecting. No celebration, no loud revenge, no anger, just control, just power that came from patience, from observation, from understanding that sometimes the quietest moves leave the deepest marks, and they knew it now. Weeks turned into months. The house was secure. The finances were under careful management. My brother no longer called in panic. He didn't need to. I had taught the lessons quietly, without shouting, without confrontation. And still, every interaction reminded them that the power dynamic had shifted completely. My mom called one morning, hesitating at first, then slowly, carefully. "Laura, I never realized how much we relied on you without seeing it." I smiled softly, calm, restrained. Sometimes the people we love take us for granted. Actions have consequences. She didn't argue. She didn't excuse herself. She was quiet, reflecting, understanding. That silence was louder than any apology could have been. My brother stopped trying to charm, to manipulate, to negotiate. Every desperate attempt had been neutralized. He understood he had been outmaneuvered, but without drama, without rage. He had learned. I visited the house one evening. It felt familiar, yet different. My presence was no longer invisible. The halls, the rooms, the spaces where I had felt overlooked, now carried a quiet acknowledgement of my influence. No celebration, no banners, no congratulations, just a subtle recognition of power that came from patience, planning, and restraint. I sat in my old room, folding the graduation gown I had kept all these years. I remembered the steps outside the hall, the photo of my mom with my brother, the empty silence that had followed, the sting of betrayal, the humiliation, the loneliness. They were still there, but tempered now by control, by quiet justice. I thought of all the small steps I had taken, asking questions, reviewing every document, managing delays, controlling access. Each move had been deliberate, measured. Each micro twist, each pause, each carefully crafted delay had brought them to this moment. The realization of their mistakes. The undeniable understanding that I was no longer a passive observer of my own life. They had called me before, begging. Now, they called me only when necessary, cautious, respectful, aware. The reversal was complete. I had given them the consequences of their choices without cruelty, without malice, but with clarity and precision. And the lessons would stay with them quietly forever. That evening, I sent a final email summarizing the changes, the trust, the oversight, and the protections. I didn't explain my motives. I didn't justify my actions. I simply laid out the facts, calm and professional. A mirror reflecting everything they had failed to see years ago. After hitting send, I leaned back. Silence. The weight of years lifted. Satisfaction didn't roar, it whispered. Quiet victory, patient and deliberate, had replaced anger. The power once denied to me was now undeniable. Later never came. But what did come was clarity, recognition, understanding. The subtle shift that made them see me fully for the first time, not just as a daughter, not just as a sibling, but as someone who had quietly mastered her own life. I thought about the people watching this story unfold. The ones who had been overlooked, underestimated, or dismissed. Patience, observation, control, actions, not words, carry the weight of consequences. That was my truth. And finally, I spoke softly to myself, reflecting on everything that had happened. If you were in my place, would you have done the same? No shouting, no celebration, no false victory, just quiet, undeniable power. And that was enough. Months passed, and life settled into a rhythm I had quietly orchestrated. The house remained safe, the finances stable, and my family, my mother and brother, had learned to navigate the consequences of their past choices. There was no dramatic confrontation, no loud celebrations, no sudden apologies, just a quiet understanding that things were different now, that I was different. I walked through the rooms of the house one evening, memories washing over me. The laughter of my brother as a child, the birthday parties, the small disappointments, the moments I had been overlooked, they were all still there. But now, I held the weight of those memories without being crushed by them. I had transformed my pain into patience, my humiliation into control, my silence into strategy. My mother called that night. Her voice was softer, more reflective than I had ever heard it. "Laura, I don't know if I can ever make up for everything." I smiled quietly. "You don't need to," I said. "Some lessons are learned best when they are experienced, not explained." She paused, understanding finally settling in. "I see now how much you had to endure." I didn't reply immediately. Silence was its own message. The acknowledgement in her pause, the weight of years realized in a single breath, carried more power than any words I could have spoken. I thought of my brother too, and the way his confidence had finally tempered into caution. He no longer assumed I would save him, no longer took my patience for granted. He had learned quietly, deliberately, through the framework I had set, and the lesson would stay with him far longer than any argument or shouting match ever could. Sitting alone in my room that night, I reflected on everything I had done. The careful planning, the patience, the small but deliberate manipulations. They were not acts of cruelty. They were acts of self-respect, justice, and understanding the power of observation. I hadn't needed to yell, to storm, to prove a point through confrontation. The quiet, patient control had spoken louder than anger ever could, and I realized something deeper. Life doesn't always give closure in loud, dramatic ways. Sometimes it gives you the quiet acknowledgement, the subtle shifts, the undeniable understanding of who truly holds the power. That had been my gift to myself, and in a way, to them as well. I thought about anyone watching, anyone who had been overlooked, underestimated, or dismissed in their own life. There is strength in patience. There is power in observation. There is clarity in restraint. And sometimes, the most satisfying victories are the ones that unfold silently, without fanfare, letting the consequences speak for themselves. I leaned back, letting the calm settle. Later never came. But now, in this quiet, steady moment, the acknowledgement of what was owed, the balance restored, and the lessons learned, it was more than enough. And softly, almost to myself, I spoke the words I had carried all these years. If you were in my place, would you have done the same? The question hung in the air, not as a challenge, but as a reflection. And for the first time in years, I felt fully seen, fully in control, and fully at peace.